Okay, good morning. Hope you folks have been having a good event so far with good conversations and understanding what are some of the things that have been happening in the industry and the vendor landscape and such. So today I'm going to talk about something that has been causing a lot of buzz in both the enterprise and the consumer industry, and I'm sure everybody is familiar with some of the things that are happening in this space. And what you will see today is how does Gen AI be applied to the security space, specifically in IGA, and how to think about some of the things we can do there. What I'm going to do is just walk through some of the pain points we've seen in the space. I'm sure most of you are aware, but it brings out a certain context for rest of the conversation relative to Gen AI. And then at the very end, I'll show a brief demo as well. Okay, I'm founder and CEO of Tuebora. We've been looking at this space with a lot of interest, both from your traditional rule-based machine learning aspects as well as Gen AI as well. So this kind of indicates where we are in terms of the industry and what we are doing, and I'm sure everybody here has experienced it, experiencing it, have dealt with in some shape or form, and have found certain ways to manage some of the complexities that you end up seeing in this space. It's because of the nature of the problem we are solving. There are a lot of moving parts. There is dynamic and fluid nature of business and how identities are changing, and also the fact that we are seeing more of a incremental approach to solve some of these problems, and it just has been a challenge for everybody in more than one way. So digging a little bit deeper in terms of what this means, when you think about it, there is a long path to get to where you want to be, and largely that is because of the very nature of the systems you are dealing with. They're complex systems, heterogeneous systems. You have things on-premise in the cloud, and you have very diverse protocols for integration, diverse security standards, and you have to deal with different user experience. You have to deal with a lot of jargon that's coming both from the vendor side and also the space itself, in terms of how you look at security and what is being managed. So overall, by the time you look at where you are and where you want to be, it tends to be a steep curve for everybody. And also the fact that you need skilled personnel to do the implementation or maintenance or take your IM initiatives forward, makes it a long and complex path forward. The next problem that I'm sure everybody here has looked at is also around the customization, because every organization is different. Every organization has different security requirements. They have to conform to different compliance, and they have different systems as well. And the way they think about entitlements and how they want to manage entitlements is also different. And how they manage identities, how they manage attributes of identities also is very disparate. And then you will find that people would want very specific workflows associated with any of the governance processes as well. So everybody ends up spending a lot of customization, irrespective of which solution or what kind of technologies you bring forth in this in this solution. So the third is a very interesting one, because we end up seeing siloed systems we have people looking at an incremental way to do their implementation and focusing on the first thing that they want to address today, and not taking a more strategic approach. Mostly the focus will be on compliance rather than on strategy, right? And you will find people specifically budgeting for one aspect of their IM pain points, and then by the time they get to addressing that with all the capabilities that they want to deploy, they would have run out of budget as well, and budget constraints end up also playing a role in the process for them. The other thing that you would have realized and noticed also is that we are deploying all these solutions, but nobody is asking a fundamental question of why is this solution working for us, or how is it working for us? So what are the metrics that we can talk about? To use a request system, for example, are your users getting provisioned in a timely manner? Are they getting the right access? And you're using provisioning systems, and are they provisioning across various systems, not only for what is needed, but also the cases where we have to do timely removal of access as well. And then you have the question of truly looking at, do I really need an access request system that is sophisticated in supporting requests, or do I want to look at a system that will actually reduce the number of requests that people should have? So which is something that people should look at as well. It's just not about how good my access request system is. Actually, a longer term strategy should be, what is it that you can put together in terms of process and methodology to bring down the request. Same goes with reviews as well. And enough has been said over the years about reviews and what it does to people, and how is it that you can reduce the reviews you want to do and take a different approach as well in terms of how you do. So not having appropriate visibility into all of this is also something that's plaguing this space as well. So having said that, what have we been doing over the years in this space, right? So we have seen from probably the last couple of decades, when I started at Avexa, we were one of the first to bring out the IGA solution back in the day. And I remember how we were trying to automate what was being done in spreadsheets, and then we said, Joe, just take that process and bring it into some sort of automation would be a major step. That was just tip of the iceberg when you started looking at things, because then people said I wanted automation with provisioning. Then they said, oh, I need new access. Then you had control. Then we talked about other capabilities into the same platform and so on. So as we are doing this, people said we need to focus on some of the things that I've outlined here. One is, people said we need a better user interface, right? And they said, okay, something that's intuitive, provides me the right navigation, provides me the right personalization, gives us a better representation of what I want to see in terms of data, what I want to do in terms of knowing the risk, and what kind of visibility I can get across the board. So there have been improvements on the interface side as well. And then we put an emphasis on simplifying the configuration, because when people start looking at how do I take the traditional joiner mover scenario, what is it that I need to do to simplify the process, right? And how much of SME involvement is needed to do something like that? And people have tried to go from heavy weightlifting in terms of coding some of those things and bringing it down to something more simpler in terms of how you manage that. People have looked at based on changes, based on events, using even from a technology perspective, how to facilitate simplifying those capabilities as well. And then out of the box capabilities, whether you talk about templates for policies, templates for your how you manage your roles, and how you want to deal with standard integrations. AD is a standard integration for most companies, right? And these days is probably the likes of Azure Active Directory. Similarly, the same can be said of some of the other standard applications as well. So out of the box, capabilities that provide you seamless integration with very little touch points to onboard those systems and manage that. So there has been good progress across the vendor space in terms of how these capabilities are put forth. And then bringing in the automation side of things itself, right? So we talk about certain things that automation talks about it in terms of provisioning. There is emphasis on provisioning. There is also the automation related to certain secondary activities that people perform in terms of workload that they have to learn. The larger enterprises typically have huge workloads that are facilitating a lot of capabilities around moving data from one system to another system, because synchronization is key. There is data from authoritative sources going into several sources in the system. So bringing those data and pushing that and increasing the automation has also been something that we've seen a lot of. And then it's also the coexistence with other IT systems, right? Some people manage the request endpoints through tickets. Some people manage it through email. Some people manage with direct provisioning in the target system. So the integration with other systems, evaluating your risk profile and all of that, there has been significant improvement. And then lastly, the improvement training as well, where we're really talking about, persona-based training and doing a lot more focused training in terms of each of the stakeholder, what they want to do, within the enterprise. And then we also have workshops that, we see a lot that are being set up. And then the community ecosystem as well, bringing in a model where, people who are using the same solution can share and exchange information around, best practices, how to do, all of this. So all this, is great in terms of how we have evolved. But in some ways, some of the things largely feel like, it's like an incremental, improvement in certain areas. Yes, there have been, marked improvements in certain areas, but mostly when you look at it, it just feels like you're just taking, the incremental steps. It's really not, addressed the way, something should be, looked at. So what we really need is a way to rethink the problem, right? A problem where I want to be able to not be dependent on too many external, entities to get through my daily activities in terms of lifecycle management, irrespective of who you are, right? Whether you're an application owner, whether you are a manager, or whether you are an auditor, whether you are somebody on the support side, doesn't matter who you are. How can I interact and operate, with an IGA solution with minimal effort? So which brings the question, every time we do something with any of these solutions with a user interface, it's almost like what to do, right? But when you think about it, most of us know what we would like to achieve, but not necessarily the fact that we have to go to this part of the menu to do this and that other part of the menu to do that, and then come back here and upload something and configure something. All those things that you have to get trained at that point. Instead, imagine if I told you what my intent is, you figure out what it should do, right? I don't want to be burdened with figuring out the intent, right? So you figure out the intent, and I'm going to tell you what I need. And whether it translates to doing 3 things here, 4 things here, that is something that the IGA solution should take up. So that's the number one thing. It was really addressing the intent, because a line of business person knows that this is what he wants to see, but don't burden him with, I need to bring in an SME to do that, right? What is it that you can do provide capabilities wise for that person to be effective. Same holds for other stakeholders as well. And then you're talking about the problem of skills, right? You will invariably find that anytime you do implementation, you're always talking about, oh, I need this service provider, I need them, and here is the set of hooks that we need to all of these things. And when you think about what you're trying to do, a lot of times it's not complex. Yes, certain scenarios are complex, but a lot of the things that people want to do is not as complex as it is made out to be. Unfortunate that we have not made it simple. We talk about simplified configuration in out-of-the-box capabilities and all that, but that is just a small step towards actually, something that we want to provide. So net, what it feels like, we have these tools, but it feels like the tool is kind of tailored for a sophisticated user, right? Irrespective of what you're trying to do, you get the feeling that it is kind of trending towards a sophisticated user. Now, let's see what we can do in terms of, if you went to some system and you said, this is what my environment looks like. I want to describe my environment with you in this format. And this is just a larger picture of what you want to achieve. In fact, you can think about anything you want to do. Take a subsystem of your IGA process, IGA activities, and you want to present your needs in this form. And the system will actually take these needs and will do something about it. Hold that thought as we go with the rest of the discussion today. But this is where we will be headed. This is what we want to talk. Think about your discovery call. Your pre-sales or salesperson. He's most likely going to give you this, right? And why do you need 4 levels of competence and skill set to take it forward, right? I can set up a POC system, if I have this data. Why can't we get into an environment where this can configure my environment? If I have connectors to these systems and everything else, and if I have a request service, access review service, and so on as part of my capabilities, I should be able to set up an environment, using data like this, right? Okay, so how does this translate to when you really think about the natural language, user interaction? First and foremost is, like I said, you need to understand intent. There are a lot of technologies available to do that today, right? I'm sure everybody here has used ChatGPT. When you think about your interactions, there is a certain pattern, there is a behavior, there is a repetitiveness, and there are things where, it will give you not so favorable responses, and it will say, I'm not sure, my data is old, things like that. But most of the time, it's just not interpreting your text as is, but it is trying to see what you're trying to do. And the context will be built the more you engage with that environment. And that context is, what will help in, taking things forward. So you first analyze the request. Then what you do is you figure out the intent and then build certain context around that intent, because you would want to anticipate potentially what is the next thing that the person wants to know about it, right? Because there will be a certain pattern to a usage. For example, a support person looks at a ticket or something that is not working, in a certain way, right? And he or she would want detail, certain level of detail. Whereas somebody, who is not a sophisticated person would want to know at a high level what is happening with your environment, right? So you figure out, you build the context according to the persona as well, and then develop insights. A lot of times this becomes important for you, right? The insights will help people steer, in a direction. So if somebody is trying to configure something, so you kind of anticipate what is the next thing they're likely to do. And for you to form an informed, provide an informed insight, you just see what, they're trying to do and what the environment already looks like, because there is already some information that's available to you. And some of this information will come later too. As you get the data, you onboard, the users, accounts, roles, entitlements, everything else. It gives you certain level of information as well, and present that insights to somebody, right? Because on one hand, you can do your mining of birthright, policies and requests and everything else, and you can present it for people, in a timely manner, and then you provide the response, appropriate response for the person you're interacting with. Okay, so what does this look like in a typical architecture, right? So you can imagine that the interface provides for multiple channels for you to interact with. Right? It can come through your collaborative tools, be it Teams or Slack, whatever you use. It can come through email, it can come through other forms, and you present those messages. Imagine you are going to live in a world where REST APIs won't have complex JSON structures, but they will actually have simple English phrases. People will interact with your system with simple English phrases, right? And you can get a path forward where a lot of efficiencies can be built in. And then these messages are transformed through that engine that I was talking about. And then over a period of time you can build sophistication where you will have different agents. So you can have something that understands provisioning knowledge, right? Something that understands requests, something that understands control, something that understands reviews. And you build a training model for each one of them. And you can build sophistication in two dimensions, right? One is out-of-the-box training for these specific agents. Second thing is training based on the data of the customer. And then, third thing is also important is the person interacting with. What are they trying to do? And what responses you're giving, and whether the responses are something that is accurate or not accurate, and the system will learn based on all of this. This collective knowledge, is what will be driven through that system. So the more complex it is, you will build more sophisticated engines, agents in terms of how you want to manage that. Okay, and then it translates to something that you want to interact with your external systems. Okay. All right. So with that said, okay. Okay. So, all right. So what I'm going to show you is just to give you a feel for how to think some of the interactions that you could have, with your, system. Okay. So I just logged in as an administrator here. Essentially, I got, a few, applications here that are, configured. But let's look at. Log in here. Okay, so the system provides you some sample flows here in terms of what questions you can ask to get you started. Right? You really want to, the first time you're using it, you want to know what it can do. So based on what has been configured and what it is, it provides you a random set of messages. So for example, if you So if you say, you type in something and the system doesn't understand, it gives you more context in terms of. So if you are operating in the context of a user, it will give you supporting user messages to operate on. If you're in the context of an account, it will analyze applications, whatever your context is, right? And so let's find out some of these things here. So let's say who is Aaron Clark, and the system will come back and tell you certain details about Aaron Clark that you want, right? So on the other hand, if I just did this, the system would recognize that there are multiple people with name Aaron, and will try to get details of those people. Of course, if you have dozens of people, it will come back and say, narrow down your query, give you some more relevant, helpful information in terms of how you dig deeper into it. So imagine this can be with any entity in your system, right? I'm just walking through an example of a user here, right? And then, so while we are here, okay, given it's a context of a user, and the two things. One is the frequency of usage and the context. Sometimes these suggestions are made. Says, okay, show me the identity schema. This is what has been configured in that environment. So you are here. You can look at your identity configuration, right? And then I want to understand some analytics around the users. It will give you some information about this, about the user. So these are things that you can, add and manipulate, however you want in terms of what you want to see from a metrics standpoint. And then we have certain other things that are of interest here. One is you can pin some of these messages. So what it means is, let's say you have a model where there are certain things that you do on a regular basis, right? And you want to group them, right? For example, you might be generating a provisioning report in the last week. That's something that is of interest to you. So you create that message and put it in one of your provisioning collections. So a bunch of your commonly used messages are there. And all that you need to do is, come back here and, you pick that particular thing and it'll do it for you. And you can actually run an entire collection as well of your messages. So if you did, something like this, it would go off and execute that with the latest piece of data, right? So a way you can make it even more easier for people to operate and use the system, right? And the pinning is an example where I can take a particular message, and then I can say I want to add this, and I can create a new collection here. And then you can see that I have a new collection here. So any of the messages you want to do, there are multiple ways to go back, right? So you can look at historically, what you have done. So you can go back historically what you've done, and I can, within the day, what are some of the activities you have performed. You can just go back and see as well. And then there is, if you're not happy with the message, it allows you to provide this feedback, and this feedback will be used by the system, right? It's very important when we are using it, tell people that it would help in the training of the system if you can provide that particular feedback. Okay. Now we talked about a particular scenario, right? So we said, what if we had something like this? Saw that in the slide. So let's see, what it does. In the interest of time, I copying and pasting what it is in there. But you give a description of your environment or your next set of workload items, right? Or deployment configuration, or next set of tasks that you want to do. So what does the system do in that process? So what it did is this. You gave this piece of information. It actually recognized a bunch of things. It recognized your applications. It recognized your access policies. It recognized your access review guidelines, right? And it also identified your access approval rules, whatever you define, right? And then you also said, my MFA is going to look like this, this environment. And you also said, when changes happen in HR, I want that data to be synchronized in an external system, right? And the beauty of this is you can present any different situations like this to the system, and it will be able to build out a model and give you a response. And this can be interactive, by the way. So it says, do you want to initiate a this configuration? When you initiate, it will take you to the process where you can select, deselect. Let's say some of the things it will not pass. But let's all not go into the assumption that everything will be passed accurately. Something will not get done, right? Something will throw up its hand and say, I don't even know what you're asking, right? It didn't match any of the criteria that I am aware of in terms of your configuration. So we will have to manually do that. But for the most part, you will get a favorable response, and you can proceed with the configuration in the process. So I'll take a smaller example and show you. So this is a simpler configuration. It refers to bunch of applications here that we have. So it's referring to it's identified 5 applications. So if I went back and so what you'll see is the summary of what is there in this environment so far. So it has Tuebora application, one HRMS, some homegrown asset, and corporate AD, Salesforce, and another role repository and AWS. So it doesn't have any of these systems, right? So let's say you think of it as potentially a sandbox in which we are doing this already, right? And you can take this sandbox and push it into some other environment subsequently as well, right? So let's say it couldn't respond and handle that. So let's try to give it. Let's see. So it says it was successfully able to create those assets. Now, if you go back and ask, tell me, what are the assets, in this deployment? So it hasn't reconciled yet, but let's look at here. So all these new assets just got created here, right? So this is just one idea of how you can imagine, you can create your workflows, you can configuration rules, policies, anything you want to do, right? Through this, a model of engagement itself, right? And lastly, one of the things you will be able to also do, in the process is you can say, so what it did is it gave a representation of your environment. And I can take this representation, go from one system to another system and deploy it. So, here is something it says, I can copy this. So this is your configuration. Imagine this is your environment. I'm, taking that and moving it to another system. Maybe from dev to QA or dev to staging. I kind of move that. Okay. So there are few other things that I could have walked us through in this flow, but happy to do that when if folks are interested. But that's on the demo side. Okay. All right. So what did we pick up here? What we are seeing is that you are no more seeing the jargon that you will have to pick up, whether it's IM related or whether it is vendor specific jargon, and you are not having to go through, I don't know if you paid attention, there are 7 or 8 places in which you had the menus, and you go sub menus, you have to search, and then you return, and then you click on more details. Imagine you have to do 6 click-throughs to do something for one entity. And each of those entities are visible in 10 different places in the menu, right? But this one interface, if you are authorized to see it, it's important to call out, this is all going to be restricted, constrained by what you are authorized to do in the environment. Just because you have a free text availability doesn't mean that you can access anything and everything you want, right? So those rules will apply here. And then significantly enhances customer experience and engagement with your system. Right? They'll have more activities they want to do, and they will be able to solve. And over a period of time, we find that the level 1 support is likely to be lower if you provide these, ability to dig deeper. For example, if you are in the UI, you want to know something failed, customer will say something failed. Sometimes it's available after you navigate to something, sometimes it is available through logs, and you have to seek out all that information. Instead you come and say, hey, why did that fail? Your support person will type and ask, hey, why did AD reconciliation not happen today? He will tell you why it did not happen, right? Or why did my workflows related to my Azure Active Directory not get provisioned, right? So significant impact to the customer experience side of things. And then the insights itself. So like I said, insights are not something that you will get immediately. It will be something that will be built over a period of time based on your persona and your interaction with the system, and that's how it will develop that capability. And then significantly increases your productivity, right? So you can imagine what it means for everybody, right? Like I said, this interface is not limited to any one person. You saw some things that a deployment engineer could use. You can see some things that a support person can use, a manager can use, right? You can ask questions like, hey, do my team members have access they should not have? It's not an easy question to ask in any other solution, right? Then you have to do a lot of hoops to get that. As long as your backbone of your solution is built with those capabilities, they can be answered through an interface like that. And then cost savings. It's a natural outcome of this, given that you have everybody using this interface, information is at your disposal, and in many cases your answers are provided for you. And if you can onboard and do configurations, if with limited exposure and with limited training on an interface like this, your line of business can do your certification campaigns. They can make changes to your approval process and all that, and you don't have to spend a lot of dollars trying to get an SME or a service provider to do that, right? So lastly, so what's the path forward, right? If you are trying to embrace something like this, how do you go about doing this, right? The way to think about it is start really small. Right? You really don't want to say, I want to do everything that the product does through this interface. That is going to be a disaster if you walk on that path, right? Just start with things about, think of it as read operations. See, I'm just going to ask some questions and get response. That I'm not working towards making changes in the system, right? I'm just looking at, I'm going to get some basic queries, and reporting done to this. And then add some simple operations, right? You get familiar with it, you know how it interacts, you know how it provides response. You open up some of these, basic operational capabilities. And then examine the training, how effective it is. The nice thing about some of these are you can see, okay, in my department, 5 people use this and they perform so many operations over a period of time, and here is what the net outcome of that. Right? How many were favorable responses? And did people start using more and more? Or if they came back and said, hey, I was able to do this, but I was not able to do this, then you know where you want to see and bring value. Right? There is one thing around innovation. The other thing is, you want adoption. You want adoption of this as an important goal in the process. Right? So see what is being fed to the system, understand the training, right, and make decisions accordingly, and then expand your personas. Maybe you just start with 1 or 2 people, right, and or 1 or 2 type of stakeholders, and then bring in more as you go, and then broaden the scope. If you see value in this, which I'm sure you will, and you will start bringing in other people into the mix and expand operationally, right? Maybe you'll pick 2 or 3 applications. Maybe you'll pick 2 or 3 processes. Maybe you'll pick 2 or 3 personas to start with. Then expand out. Then how this is progressing. Okay, that's it from my side. Any questions?